The medical bay of the horizon's edge was quiet as it usually was. Dr. Tae Yang sat at his desk, reviewing the daily health reports from the human diplomatic crew. Nothing exciting ever happened here. A few headaches, some muscle strain from the artificial gravity adjustments, and one case of space sickness from a rookie officer. Tae Yang treated them all with the same careful attention he gave everything in his life. He was a simple man with a simple job. Back on Earth, he had grown up on a small farming colony where medical care was scarce. He remembered watching the traveling doctors who visited twice a year, and he knew from a young age that he wanted to help people like that. He studied hard, worked harder, and eventually made it through medical school. When the opportunity came to join the diplomatic corps as a field medic, he took it without hesitation. Now here he was at Unity Prime, the massive space station where dozens of alien species gathered to conduct business and politics. Humans were new here. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 20 years ago, and the older alien races still looked at them like curious children. Some were friendly. Most were politely dismissive. A few were openly contemptuous. Tae Yang did not mind. He was used to being underestimated. He was not particularly tall, not particularly strong, and not particularly ambitious. He simply wanted to do his job well and maybe learn something about the incredible galaxy he now called home. The station's intercom crackled to life, interrupting his thoughts. All personnel, please be advised. The Velrothi Royal Cruiser is approaching Dock 7. Standard diplomatic protocols are in effect. Tae Yang glanced at the clock. The Velrothi were arriving early. He had read about them in the cultural briefings. They were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the Galactic Council. Their bodies were partially crystalline, and they possessed natural psychic abilities that humans could barely comprehend. They were beautiful, elegant, and utterly beyond human understanding. The Velrothi were also at war. For the past 3 years, they had been fighting the Krell Dominion, an aggressive insectoid species that expanded through conquest and assimilation. The war was brutal and showed no signs of ending. Princess Hei-Wan, the Velrothi Emperor's daughter, was coming to Unity Prime to negotiate for additional support from the Council. Tae Yang had no illusions that he would meet anyone important. Humans were not significant enough to warrant attention from Velrothi royalty. He would stay in his medical bay, ready to help if any of the human diplomats needed him, and that would be the extent of his involvement. Hours passed. The reception for Princess Hei-Wan was taking place in the Grand Hall, several levels above the human quarters. Tae Yang could see the live feed on his monitor if he wanted, but he was not particularly interested in politics. Instead, he organized his medical supplies and updated his inventory. The station would resupply them next week, and he wanted to make sure he had everything he needed. Then the alarms went off. The sharp, piercing sound made Tae Yang jump to his feet. Red lights flashed throughout the medical bay. His communication device buzzed with an emergency channel override. Medical emergency in the Grand Hall. All available personnel respond immediately. Repeat medical emergency. Tae Yang grabbed his emergency kit and ran. The corridors were chaos. Station security rushed past him, weapons drawn. Diplomats from various species pressed themselves against the walls, their faces showing fear in a dozen different ways. He pushed through the crowd, his medical training overriding any hesitation. When he reached the Grand Hall, the scene was worse than he imagined. The beautiful crystalline decorations were shattered. Scorch marks blackened the walls. In the center of the room, surrounded by panicking guards and officials, Princess Hei-Wan lay on the floor. She was beautiful even in distress. Her skin had a faint crystalline sheen that caught the light, and her long dark hair spread around her like a halo. But something was wrong. Her body was flickering, the crystalline parts of her skin fracturing and reforming in disturbing patterns. 3 alien doctors were already working on her, their advanced medical devices scanning and probing, but Tae Yang could see the confusion on their faces, or at least what passed for faces among their species. They did not know what was wrong. A tall Velrothi guard spotted Tae Yang and grabbed him by the arm. "You human, you are a doctor, yes?" Tae Yang nodded. "Yes, but Come. Now." The guard pulled him forward with surprising strength. The other doctors looked up as Tae Yang approached. One of them, a being with tentacles and multiple eyes, spoke in the common galactic language. "This is pointless. The human knows nothing of Velrothi biology. We are the best medical minds on this station and we cannot identify the problem. Then step aside and let him try, the Velrothi guard growled. The princess is dying. What do we have to lose? The tentacled doctor moved away reluctantly. Taeyang knelt beside Princess Heiwan, his hands already reaching for his scanner. The device was primitive compared to what the alien doctors had, but it was what he knew how to use. Princess Heiwan's eyes opened slightly. They were striking, with an inner luminescence that seemed to pulse with her failing heartbeat. She looked at Taeyang, and despite her pain, there was curiosity in her gaze. "You are human," she whispered. "Yes, Your Highness. My name is Dr. Taeyang. I am going to help you." "They expect nothing from you," she said softly. "I can feel their thoughts. They think you are primitive." Taeyang smiled gently. "They are probably right. But I am here, and I am going to do my best. That is all I can promise." He ran his scanner over her body, focusing on the areas where the crystalline fractures were most severe. His medical training kicked in, analyzing what he saw. The other doctors had been using advanced technology to scan her cellular structure, her psychic energy fields, her quantum biological markers. They were looking at the complex systems that made the Velrothi unique, but Taeyang looked at something simpler. He looked at the pattern of the fractures. He looked at how they spread, and he remembered something from his basic physics classes back in medical school, something about crystal formation and resonance frequencies. "This is not a disease," he said quietly. "This is poison, a very specific kind of poison designed to exploit your crystalline biology." The other doctors immediately started arguing, but the Velrothi guard silenced them with a sharp gesture. "Explain, human." Taeyang pointed to his scanner readings. "Look at the pattern. The fractures are spreading in harmonic waves. Someone introduced a substance into her body that resonates at the same frequency as her crystalline cells. It is making them vibrate and shatter from the inside." Princess Heiwan's hand reached out and gripped his wrist. Her touch was cold and felt like smooth glass. "Can you stop it?" Taeyang met her eyes. He saw hope there and fear, and something else he could not quite identify. He thought about lying to make her feel better, but he had never been good at lying. "I do not know," he said honestly, "but I am going to try." The Velrothi medical chamber was the most advanced facility Taeyang had ever seen. The walls themselves seemed to be alive with flowing light, and holographic displays showed Princess Heiwan's biological data in stunning detail. Alien medical equipment that Taeyang could not even name hummed and beeped around the princess as she lay on a crystalline bed. But for all its advancement, the chamber might as well have been empty. The princess was getting worse. Taeyang stood at her bedside, surrounded by hostile stares. The Velrothi court physician, a tall, elegant man named Veltar, watched him with barely concealed contempt. Two other senior doctors from advanced alien species stood nearby, their body language making it clear they thought this was a waste of time. "The human's theory is interesting," Veltar said coldly, "but ultimately useless. We have scanned for every known poison in the galactic database. We have analyzed her cellular structure at the quantum level. There is nothing that matches his primitive assessment." Taeyang ignored the insult. He had been called worse things before. Instead, he focused on the scanner in his hands. The simple human device that looked like a child's toy compared to the Velrothi equipment. "Your scanners are looking for complex biological agents," Taeyang said quietly. "But what if the poison is not biological? What if it is more like a physical catalyst?" "Explain yourself, human," the Velrothi guard who had brought him here demanded. His name was Kale Ron, and unlike the doctors, he seemed willing to listen. Taeyang pulled up a holographic display from his scanner, showing a simplified version of what he was seeing. "On Earth, we have substances called silicon compounds. When they interact with certain crystals, they can cause harmonic resonance. The crystals vibrate at specific frequencies and eventually shatter. Your princess has crystalline biology. If someone introduced the right compound into her system, it would make her cells vibrate and break apart exactly like what we are seeing." Veltar waved his hand dismissively. "That is basic physics. We have already checked for such substances. There are none present in her bloodstream." "Maybe it is not in her bloodstream anymore," Taeyang countered. "Maybe it already bonded with her crystalline cells. Your scanners are so advanced that they filter out simple compounds as background noise. You are looking for sophisticated poisons, not simple ones. The other doctors exchanged glances. One of them, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish with multiple brains visible through its transparent body, spoke up. The human may have a point. We have been assuming this is an advanced biological weapon, but the Krell are known for their efficiency. They do not waste resources on complexity when simplicity will work. Veltar's expression hardened. Even if the human is correct about the nature of the poison, he cannot possibly know how to treat it. Velrathi biology is far beyond human medical knowledge. Princess Haywan coughed and small crystal fragments fell from her lips. The sight made Taeyang's chest tighten with worry. She was running out of time. Let him try, Kael'ron said firmly. She is dying anyway. What harm can the human do that has not already been done? Veltar looked like he wanted to argue more, but a communication device on his wrist chimed. He listened for a moment, his face becoming even more grave. The Emperor has given his permission. The human may proceed, but if he fails, he will answer to the throne. Taeyang nodded. He had expected as much. He turned to Princess Haywan, who was watching him with those luminous eyes. Despite her pain, she seemed calm. Your Highness, I need to ask you some questions.
Can you speak?
She nodded weakly. Yes. When did you first feel the symptoms? During the reception. I accepted a drink from the Krell ambassador. It was supposed to be a gesture of goodwill. She smiled bitterly. I should have known better. Did you taste anything unusual? No, it tasted like water. But about 10 minutes later, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. Like something was vibrating inside me. Taeyang nodded. That confirmed his theory. The poison was designed to be tasteless and to bond quickly with crystalline cells. Whoever designed this was smart and knew Velrathi biology well. I need to try something, he said. It will be painful, but if I am right, it might save your life. Do it, she said without hesitation. Taeyang turned to the gathered doctors. I need a harmonic frequency generator, something that can produce very precise vibrations. For what purpose? Veltar demanded. If the poison is making her cells vibrate at their resonant frequency, then I need to introduce a counter frequency. Think of it like noise-canceling technology. I can use opposing vibrations to stabilize her crystalline structure. The jellyfish-like doctor pulsed with interest. That is actually quite clever. Crude but clever. I can provide such a device. While the doctor retrieved the equipment, Taeyang prepared the second part of his treatment. He opened his medical kit and pulled out a small vial of clear liquid. It was a compound used in human medicine to absorb toxins from the bloodstream. It was based on activated charcoal but modified for use in space environments. Veltar stared at the vial. You cannot be serious. That is a human medicine. It will do nothing for Velrathi biology. Actually, it might, Taeyang said. This compound works by binding to foreign substances at the molecular level. If the poison has any unbound molecules still circulating in her system, this should capture them before they bond with more cells. And if you are wrong, Veltar asked coldly, then she dies a few minutes sooner than she would have anyway, Taeyang said honestly. He looked at Princess Haywan. I will not lie to you, Your Highness. This is experimental. I have never treated anyone like you before, but I believe this will work. Princess Haywan reached out and took his hand. Her grip was weak but steady. I trust you, Dr. Taeyang. I do not know why, but I do. Proceed. The jellyfish doctor returned with the frequency generator, a sleek device that looked like a small rod with a crystalline tip. Taeyang took it carefully and began calibrating it using his scanner. He needed the exact opposite frequency of the poison's resonance. One wrong calculation and he would make things worse. The room fell silent except for the soft beeping of medical equipment. Taeyang's hands were steady despite the pressure. He had always been good in emergencies. While others panicked, his mind became calm and focused. I am ready, he announced. He looked at Princess Haywan one more time. This will hurt. Pain is temporary, she replied. Death is permanent. Begin. Taeyang activated the frequency generator and held it near her chest where the fractures were most severe. At the same time, he injected the toxin-absorbing compound into her arm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Princess Haywan screamed. Her body convulsed on the bed and Kael'ron had to hold her down to keep her from injuring herself. The crystalline fractures in her skin glowed bright white, spreading faster than before. The other doctors rushed forward, shouting that Taeyang was killing her, but Taeyang held steady. He watched his scanner, monitoring the harmonic frequencies. The readings showed exactly what he hoped to see. The opposing frequency was working. The vibrations in her cells were decreasing. He just needed to hold on a little longer. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the fractures stopped spreading. Then they began to heal. The crystalline structure of her skin started reforming, the cracks sealing themselves with new growth. Princess Heywan's screams faded to gasps, then to quiet breathing. After what felt like hours but was actually only 5 minutes, Taeyang turned off the frequency generator. The room was utterly silent. Every eye was on the princess. She opened her eyes and sat up slowly. Her skin was whole again, the crystalline sheen restored. She looked at her hands in wonder, flexing her fingers. "It worked," she whispered. Then she looked at Taeyang, and her expression was one of pure amazement. "You saved my life." Taeyang felt his legs go weak with relief. He had gambled with a princess's life and won. "I am glad, Your Highness." Veltar stared at him like he was seeing Taeyang for the first time. The contempt was gone, replaced by confusion and something that might have been respect. "Impossible. This should not have worked," Taeyang smiled tiredly. "Sometimes the simple solution is the right one." News of Princess Heywan's recovery spread through Unity Prime like wildfire. Within hours, every species on the station knew the story. A human doctor, belonging to one of the newest and least advanced races in the Galactic Council, had saved the Velrathi princess when the best medical minds in the galaxy had failed. Taeyang found himself suddenly famous, and he hated every moment of it. Diplomats wanted to meet him. Scientists wanted to interview him. Even the station commander, a massive being with 4 arms and stone-like skin, summoned him to offer official congratulations. Everywhere he went, beings stopped to stare at him. Some with curiosity, some with respect, and some with suspicion. The human diplomatic team was thrilled. Ambassador Park, a cheerful woman who led the human delegation, could not stop smiling. "Do you understand what you have done, Taeyang? You have put humanity on the map. Every species here is talking about us now." Taeyang just wanted to go back to his quiet medical bay and his simple routine. "I was just doing my job, Ambassador." "Just doing your job," she repeated with a laugh. "You saved a princess and potentially changed the course of human-alien relations. But yes, just doing your job." 3 days after the incident, a Velrathi official arrived at the human quarters. He was tall and elegant, wearing robes that shimmered like liquid crystal. "Dr. Taeyang, Princess Heywan requests your presence. Will you accompany me?" Taeyang had been avoiding this meeting. He knew it was coming, but hoped he could delay it a bit longer. With a sigh, he put down his medical reports and followed the official through the station. The Velrathi delegation occupied an entire section of Unity Prime. Their quarters were beautiful, with crystalline walls that refracted light into rainbow patterns. Everywhere Taeyang looked, he saw evidence of a culture thousands of years older than his own. It was humbling and slightly overwhelming. Princess Heywan waited for him in a private chamber overlooking the stars. She stood by the window, her form backlit by distant galaxies. When she turned to face him, Taeyang was struck again by how different she was from humans. Her crystalline features caught the light in ways that seemed almost magical. "Dr. Taeyang," she said warmly, "thank you for coming. Please sit." They sat at a low table made of something that looked like living crystal. A servant brought them drinks in delicate cups. Taeyang noticed that his cup was designed for human hands, smaller and simpler than the one the princess used. "How are you feeling, Your Highness?" he asked. "Please call me Heywan when we are alone. I think we are past formalities, do you not agree?" She smiled. "I am feeling well. Thanks to you. The doctors say I have fully recovered. There is no trace of the poison left in my system. I am very glad to hear that." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their drinks. Then Heywan spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "I have been thinking about what happened. About how you succeeded where others failed. Do you know why it worked?" Taeyang considered the question carefully. "I think it worked because I approached the problem differently. The other doctors were using very advanced technology and looking for complex solutions. But sometimes the answer is simpler than that. On Earth we have a saying, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras." Heywan tilted her head, curious. "I do not understand." "It means that the most obvious explanation is usually correct. The other doctors assumed the poison was advanced because the Krell are known for sophisticated weapons. But I looked at the symptoms and thought about basic physics. Sometimes being less advanced means you see things that others overlook." The princess nodded slowly. That is fascinating. Tell me more about humanity, about Earth. Your species is so new to us, and I find myself wanting to understand you better. So Taeyang told her. He spoke about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests. He told her about his childhood on a farming colony, about watching crops grow and learning the value of patience. He explained how humanity had struggled to reach the stars, how many failures came before their success. Haewon listened with genuine interest, asking questions and making observations. Taeyang found himself relaxing in her presence. Despite being a princess from an ancient and powerful species, she was kind and curious. She did not look down on him for being human. "You are different from what I expected," she said after a while. "The Velrathi have been part of the Galactic Council for over 10,000 years. In that time, we have become set in our ways. We rely on our technology, our traditions, our proven methods. But you humans are new. You still believe that anything is possible. You have not yet learned to accept limitations. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Taeyang asked. "I think it is a very good thing," she replied. "It is what saved my life. And it might be what the galaxy needs right now." She stood and walked to the window again, looking out at the stars. "The war with the Krell is not going well. We are evenly matched in technology and resources. The conflict has become a stalemate that costs thousands of lives every day. My people are tired. We need something new, something different. A fresh perspective." Taeyang joined her at the window. "I am just a doctor, Your Highness. I do not know anything about war or strategy." "Haewon," she corrected gently, "and I disagree. You know about solving problems when others say they cannot be solved. You know about not giving up even when the situation seems hopeless." She turned to face him. "I have a proposal for you. I want you to become my personal physician and advisor." Taeyang blinked in surprise. "Me, but I am not qualified to advise you. I know nothing about Velrathi politics or military matters." "That is exactly why I want you," she said with a smile. "Everyone else around me knows too much. They cannot see past what has always been done, but you can. You look at problems with fresh eyes. That is what I need. I would have to ask my superiors. I am still part of the human diplomatic corps. I have already spoken with Ambassador Park. She is enthusiastic about the idea. She says it would strengthen human-Velrathi relations." Haewon stepped closer. "I am not ordering you, Taeyang. I am asking. Will you help me? Will you help my people?" Taeyang thought about his quiet medical bay, his simple routine, his comfortable anonymity. He thought about how much easier his life would be if he said no. But he also thought about the Velrathi soldiers dying in the war, about the Krell victims of the conflict, about all the suffering that could be prevented if someone found a better way. He was not a hero. He had never wanted to be important or famous. But he was a doctor, and doctors helped people. That was what he did. "Yes," he said. "I will help you." Haewon's smile was radiant. She reached out and took his hand, the gesture formal but warm. "Thank you, Dr. Taeyang. I believe you are going to change everything." Later that evening, Taeyang returned to the human quarters to pack his belongings. His colleague Jiho, a combat medic with a sharp wit and sharper skills, found him sorting through his medical supplies. "So it is true," Jiho said, leaning against the doorframe. "You are really going to work for an alien princess." "It appears so," Taeyang replied. "You know everyone is going to think you are crazy, right? Working directly for the Velrathi during wartime? That is dangerous, probably," Taeyang agreed. He looked at his friend. "Want to come with me? I could use a good combat medic, and someone who can keep me from doing anything too stupid." Jiho laughed. "You really know how to sell an opportunity. Fine, someone needs to keep you alive." He paused. "Besides, this is going to be interesting. Humans working alongside Velrathi during the biggest war in the sector. Yeah, I would not miss this for anything." They shook hands, and Taeyang felt a sense of relief. Whatever came next, at least he would not face it alone. He had no idea that he was about to become one of the most important figures in galactic history. He just knew that people needed help, and he was going to do his best to provide it. That was enough for now. The Velrathi homeworld of Crystallum was beautiful beyond words. From orbit, it looked like a giant gemstone floating in space, its surface catching and reflecting light in brilliant patterns. When Taeyang's shuttle descended through the atmosphere, he saw crystal formations the size of mountains, forests of crystalline trees that chimed in the wind, and cities that seemed to grow naturally from the landscape rather than being built upon it. But beneath the beauty, there was war, Military vessels filled the orbital space around the planet. Wounded soldiers were being transported down from the front lines every hour. The elegant Velrathi civilization was fighting for its survival, and the strain showed in every face Tai Yang saw. Princess Haiwan met them at the landing platform, accompanied by a small group of officials. She looked different here, more formal and regal than she had been on Unity Prime. But when she saw Tai Yang and Jiho, her expression softened. "Welcome to Crystallum," she said. "I wish you were seeing it in better times." "It is still beautiful." "Your Highness," Tai Yang replied honestly. "Come, there is much to show you, and I'm afraid we have little time for pleasantries." She led them through the Crystal Palace to a military transport vehicle. As they traveled through the capital city, Tai Yang saw more signs of the war. Buildings damaged by Krell attacks, citizens with haunted expressions, medical facilities overflowing with wounded soldiers. Their destination was a massive military hospital complex on the outskirts of the city. It was built partially underground for protection from orbital strikes. As they entered, Tai Yang's medical training took over. He noticed the efficiency of the facility, the organization of triage areas, the sophisticated equipment. But he also noticed the exhausted staff and the rows upon rows of occupied medical beds. A Velrathi doctor approached them. She looked tired but maintained her composure. "Your Highness, the situation is worse than yesterday. We lost 43 more soldiers in the night." Haiwan's expression tightened. "Show us." The doctor led them through the facility to a secure ward. The smell hit Tai Yang first, a strange combination of chemicals and something organic that made his stomach turn. Then he saw the patients. Velrathi soldiers lay in crystalline beds, their bodies undergoing horrifying transformations. Their skin was turning gray and crumbling. Their crystalline features were dissolving like they were melting. Some screamed in pain. Others lay silent, too far gone to make any sound. "What is this?" Jiho asked quietly. "A Krell bioweapon," the doctor explained. "It was deployed 3 weeks ago on the Tamar front. Any Velrathi exposed to it begins this cellular decay. We have tried everything we know. Nothing stops it. We can only make them comfortable while they die." Tai Yang approached one of the beds. The soldier lying there was young, probably not much older than 20 in human years. His crystalline skin was fractured and discolored. His breathing was labored. When he saw Tai Yang, confusion crossed his features. "Human?" the soldier whispered. "Yes. My name is Dr. Tai Yang. I am here to help." "No one can help." The soldier coughed, and crystal dust fell from his lips. "The doctor said so." Tai Yang pulled out his scanner and began examining the soldier. Jiho joined him, taking additional readings with his own equipment. They worked in silence while Princess Haiwan and the Velrathi doctors watched. After several minutes, Tai Yang stepped back and looked at Jiho. His colleague's expression mirrored his own concern. This was worse than anything they had seen before. "Well?" Haiwan asked. "Can you help them?" Tai Yang chose his words carefully. "The bioweapon is attacking their cellular structure at a fundamental level. It is like a virus, but more aggressive. The problem is that Velrathi cells are very specialized and rigid. Once the weapon begins breaking them down, your immune system cannot adapt fast enough to fight it." "We know all this," the head doctor said, a note of frustration in her voice. "What we do not know is how to stop it." "Human immune systems work differently," Jiho said, catching on to what Tai Yang was thinking. "We are messy and chaotic. Our cells adapt quickly because we have to. We evolved on a planet full of diseases and pathogens." Tai Yang nodded. "If we can analyze how the bioweapon works and compare it to how human cells would respond, we might be able to create a hybrid treatment. Use human antibody patterns as a template to help Velrathi immune systems fight back." The Velrathi doctors looked skeptical. One of them spoke up. "Human and Velrathi biology are completely different. How could human antibodies possibly help us?" "They cannot," Tai Yang admitted. "At least not directly. But if we can understand why human cells would resist this weapon, we can teach your cells to do the same thing." Princess Haiwan stepped forward. "How long would this take?" "I do not know. Days, maybe weeks. We would need a laboratory and access to both Velrathi and human biological samples." "And if it does not work?" the head doctor asked. "Then we try something else," Tai Yang said simply. "But right now your soldiers are dying. Doing nothing is not an option." Haiwan made her decision immediately. Give them whatever they need. Full access to our research facilities. Assign a team to work with them. She looked at Tai Yang. Save my people, doctor, please. The next week was a blur of work. Tai Yang and Jiho set up their laboratory in a secure section of the hospital. They were joined by Da Yun, a human xenobiologist who specialized in alien cellular structures. She had volunteered to come to Crystallum when she heard about the crisis, eager to help and to study the unique challenges of cross-species medicine. The three humans worked around the clock, analyzing the bioweapon, studying Velrathi cellular biology, and comparing it to human immune responses. The Velrathi doctors who had been skeptical at first gradually became interested as they saw the humans' unique approach to the problem. You work so chaotically, one Velrathi scientist observed, watching Daun juggle 3 different experiments at once. How do you keep track of everything? Dayan laughed. This is organized for us. You should see human emergency rooms during an epidemic. That is real chaos. But the chaos had a method. The humans tried things that Velrathi science would have dismissed as too simple or too risky. They experimented with combinations that made no sense according to traditional biology. They failed often, but each failure taught them something new. On the 7th day, Taeyang had a breakthrough. He was examining his own blood under a microscope when he noticed how his white blood cells responded to a sample of the Krell bioweapon. They did not destroy it, but they surrounded it and isolated it, preventing it from spreading. That is it, he said excitedly. We do not need to kill the weapon. We just need to contain it long enough for the Velrathi immune system to adapt. Working from this principle, the team developed a serum using Tai Yang's own blood as the base. They modified it to be compatible with Velrathi biology, added compounds to enhance the containment response, and included stimulants to accelerate the natural immune adaptation process. When they were ready, they brought their work to Princess He Wan and the medical board. Taeyang explained the treatment clearly and honestly, including all the risks. The first test should be done on me, he said. We need to verify it works before trying it on any Velrathi soldiers. You would test an untried serum on yourself? The head doctor asked in disbelief. It is based on my own blood. If it works on anyone, it will work on me first, but Heywan shook her head. No, we will test it on a volunteer soldier who is already dying. If the treatment fails, we have lost nothing. If it succeeds, we save a life. She was right, of course. They selected a soldier whose condition was critical. The young warrior agreed to the treatment, knowing he would die anyway without it. Taeyang administered the serum himself, his hands steady despite the weight of what he was doing. For the first hour, nothing happened. Then the soldier's vital signs began to stabilize. The gray discoloration of his skin started to fade. The cellular decay slowed, then stopped. By the end of the day, the soldier was sitting up in bed, weak but alive. The treatment worked. Within a week, they had produced enough serum to treat all the infected soldiers in the hospital. Within a month, production facilities across Crystallum were manufacturing the cure. The bioweapon that had killed thousands of Velrathi soldiers was no longer a death sentence. Taeyang stood in the hospital ward, watching recovered soldiers prepare to return to their units. Jiho joined him, a tired smile on his face. We did it, Jiho said. We did, Taeyang agreed, but he felt no triumph, only relief. Lives had been saved. That was all that mattered. Princess Heywan found them later. The military command wants to meet you. They are calling you the miracle healer from Earth. Taeyang sighed. I wish they would not. I am just a doctor doing my job. Heywan smiled. Perhaps, but the galaxy is starting to notice that when a human doctor does his job, miracles seem to happen. The news of the cure spread quickly, and not everyone was happy about it. The Krell Dominion had invested significant resources in developing their bioweapon. Now, thanks to a human doctor, their strategic advantage was gone. The Krell response was swift and brutal. Intelligence reports came in 2 weeks after the cure's widespread deployment. The Krell had identified Taeyang as the primary threat to their biological warfare program. They knew where he worked. They knew his routines, and they were planning an attack. Kael'Ron, the Velrathi guard who had first brought Taeyang to Princess Heywan, delivered the news personally. The military wants to evacuate you and your team to a secure location. The hospital is too exposed. Taeyang was in the middle of treating a patient, a young soldier who had suffered injuries in a skirmish at the front lines. He did not look up from his work. I am not leaving. There are still patients here who need care. Dr. Taeyang, the Krell are sending a strike team specifically to kill you. This is not a request. I heard you, Taeyang said calmly, finishing the suture he was working on. But these soldiers came here for medical treatment. If I abandon them now, what kind of doctor would that make me? Jiho, who was working on another patient nearby, laughed. I told you he would say that. You owe me 20 credits. Kael'Ron looked exasperated. You humans are insane. Both of you. Probably, Jiho agreed cheerfully. But we are staying. Da-Un emerged from the research lab, wiping her hands on a towel. Are we arguing about the evacuation order? Because I am not leaving either. I have experiments running that cannot be interrupted. Kael'Ron threw up his hands in frustration and went to report to his superiors. Within an hour, Princess Heiwan herself arrived at the hospital, flanked by security personnel. You three are incredibly stubborn, she said without preamble. It has been mentioned before. Your Highness, Taeyang replied. If you will not leave, then I am doubling the security here, and I am staying with you. Now it was Taeyang's turn to be exasperated. That is not necessary. You should be somewhere safe. And leave you here to face the Krell alone? What kind of friend would that make me? She smiled at him. You are not the only stubborn one here, Doctor. The attack came 3 days later in the early hours of the morning. Taeyang was sleeping in his quarters when the alarms woke him. Explosions rocked the hospital complex and the sound of weapons fire echoed through the corridors. He grabbed his medical kit and ran toward the patient ward. Jiho met him halfway, already armed with a pistol that Kael'Ron had given him. Krell infiltration team. At least 20 of them. They are fighting through the security checkpoints. The patients, already being evacuated to the underground levels. But we have critical cases that cannot be moved. Someone needs to stay with them. They reached the intensive care ward to find Kael'Ron and a squad of Velrathi soldiers setting up a defensive position. The Krell were coming from the east corridor and the sounds of battle were getting closer. You should go, Kael'Ron said when he saw them. We will hold them here. Not happening, Jiho replied, checking his weapon. Besides, you need all the soldiers you can get. I was a combat medic before I became a regular medic. I know how to shoot. Taeyang moved to check on the patients who could not be evacuated. There were 5 of them, all in critical condition. Some were unconscious. Others watched him with frightened eyes. I am not going to let anything happen to you, he told them quietly. The battle reached their position faster than expected. The Krell were efficient and deadly, their insectoid bodies moving with terrifying speed. They used advanced weapons and tactics, overwhelming the Velrathi defenders through sheer aggression. Kael'Ron and his soldiers fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. One by one, the defenders fell. Jiho proved his combat skills, taking down 3 Krell warriors with precise shots, but even he could not hold back the tide. Then a Krell warrior broke through the defensive line and charged toward the patient ward. Taeyang saw it coming. The creature was massive, easily twice his size, with razor-sharp limbs and multiple eyes that fixed on him with obvious intent. Taeyang did the only thing he could think of. He stepped between the Krell warrior and his patients. He had no weapon. He was not a fighter. But he was a doctor, and protecting patients was what doctors did. You will not touch them, he said firmly. The Krell warrior tilted its head, as if confused by the small human standing in its way. Then it raised its bladed limb to strike. The blow never landed. A blast of crystalline energy hit the Krell warrior from the side, sending it crashing into the wall. Princess Heiwan stood at the corridor entrance, her hand glowing with psychic power. Behind her, more Velrathi soldiers poured into the ward. The tide of battle turned. The Krell, realizing they were now outnumbered, began to retreat. Jiho and the surviving soldiers pursued them, while Heiwan rushed to Taeyang's side. Are you hurt? She demanded, her hands checking him for injuries with surprising gentleness. I am fine. But there was a child. He looked around frantically and saw what he had feared. A young Velrathi child, probably the offspring of one of the hospital staff, had been caught in the crossfire. The child lay on the floor, bleeding from a wound in the chest. Taeyang dropped to his knees beside the child, his medical training taking over. The wound was serious, possibly fatal. He pulled out his emergency medical supplies and began working, his hands moving with practiced efficiency, but a piece of shrapnel had pierced his own side during the chaos. Taeyang had not noticed it in the heat of the moment, but now he felt the pain spreading through his body, blood soaked through his shirt. Taeyang, you are wounded, Heywan said urgently. The child first, he replied, not stopping his work. I can wait. Jiho returned and saw the situation immediately. You stubborn idiot. He moved to help Taeyang, adding his medical expertise to stabilize the child. Together, they saved the young Velrothi's life. Only after the child was stable and being transported to surgery did Taeyang allow himself to collapse. Heywan caught him, lowering him gently to the floor. Now will you let someone treat you? She asked, her voice shaking slightly. I suppose I should, he said with a weak smile. It would be embarrassing to survive a Krell attack only to die from stubbornness. The Velrothi doctors worked on him for hours. The shrapnel had damaged his liver, and he had lost a lot of blood. But he was young and healthy, and human bodies were surprisingly resilient. By the next morning, he was awake and recovering. Princess Heywan was sitting beside his bed when he opened his eyes. She looked exhausted, like she had not slept at all. The child? He asked immediately, alive and recovering. Thanks to you. She reached out and took his hand. Do you have any idea how terrified I was when I saw you standing there, unarmed, facing that Krell warrior? I was fairly terrified myself, he admitted, but I could not let it reach my patience. I know. She squeezed his hand gently. That is what makes you remarkable. Not your medical skills, though those are impressive, but your unwavering commitment to doing what is right no matter the cost to yourself. I was just doing my job. You keep saying that, but I am beginning to understand that when humans do their jobs, they do them with a dedication that puts the rest of us to shame. News of the attack and Taeyang's actions spread throughout the Velrothi military and beyond. The image of a human doctor, wounded and bleeding, still refusing to abandon his patients, became a symbol. Soldiers talked about the small human who stood against a Krell warrior with nothing but his courage and his medical oath. The Galactic Council took notice. If humans were willing to sacrifice themselves for alien species, to fight and bleed alongside their allies, then perhaps they deserved more respect than the elder races had given them. In the recovery ward, surrounded by patients he had saved and guarded by soldiers who now saw him as one of their own, Taeyang simply rested and healed. He did not think about his growing reputation or his symbolic importance. He thought about his patients and whether they would have enough medical supplies when he returned to work. Some things, he decided, would never change. And he was okay with that. Taeyang spent 2 weeks recovering from his injuries. He was not a good patient. He constantly tried to get out of bed to check on other patients, much to the frustration of the nurses. Jiho had to physically restrain him on 3 separate occasions. You need to rest, Jiho said firmly after the 3rd attempt. Doctor's orders. And since I am a doctor too, you have to listen to me. There is work to be done, Taeyang protested. People need help. And you cannot help anyone if you tear open your surgical wounds. So sit down, shut up, and let your body heal. Taeyang grumbled but obeyed. While he recovered, the war continued. The Krell had lost their bioweapon advantage, but they were still a formidable military force. Battles raged across a dozen star systems. Casualties mounted on both sides. The conflict seemed endless. On the 15th day of his recovery, Princess Heywan visited him with a grave expression. She was accompanied by several high-ranking military officials and intelligence officers. We have a problem, she said without preamble. A very serious problem. She activated a holographic display showing a remote Krell facility. It was a massive station orbiting a dead planet, heavily fortified and bristling with weapons. Our intelligence has discovered that the Krell are developing a new bioweapon. This one is even more dangerous than the last. According to our sources, it is designed not just to kill Velrothi, but to spread to multiple species. If they deploy it, it could devastate populations across the entire sector. One of the military officers, a scarred veteran named Telvar, spoke up. We have tried to plan a military strike on the facility, but it is too well defended. Any large assault would be detected long before we reached it. The Krell would simply deploy the weapon prematurely rather than let us destroy it. So we do nothing? Taeyang asked. We debate, Telvar said bitterly. The Galactic Council argues about protocols and proper procedures while the Krell prepare to kill millions. Taeyang studied the holographic display carefully. Diane, who had joined them, was doing the same thing. After a long moment, they looked at each other, and Taeyang could see that she was thinking the same thing he was. What if we do not destroy the weapon? He said slowly. What if we neutralize it instead? The military officers looked confused. Explain, Princess Haywan said. A large military strike would be detected, Tae-yang continued. But what about a small team? Just a few people infiltrating the station. If we could reach the bioweapon storage, we could introduce a counter-agent that renders it harmless. Telvar shook his head. Impossible. The station has internal sensors that detect Velrothi biology. Any of our people would be identified immediately. But they do not scan for human biology, Daoun said, catching on. The Krell do not consider humans a threat. Their sensors might not even register us properly. You are suggesting that humans infiltrate a Krell military research station? Telvar asked incredulously. That is suicide. Probably, Tae-yang agreed. But it might work. And right now it seems like the only option we have. Princess Haywan was quiet for a long moment, her expression troubled. Even if you could get inside, how would you neutralize a weapon you have never seen before? We have been studying Krell biological warfare for weeks now, Daoun explained. We understand the basic principles they use. If we can analyze the weapon even briefly, I believe we can develop a counter-agent using human biochemistry as a base, the same approach that worked before. The same approach that nearly got Tae-yang killed, Haywan said sharply. Yes, Tae-yang replied honestly. But if the alternative is letting millions die, then the risk is worth it. Another officer spoke up. Even assuming you could infiltrate the station and reach the weapon, how would you get there in the first place? Every Krell ship in the sector would identify a human vessel immediately. We use a captured Krell ship, Jiho suggested. He had entered the room quietly and was leaning against the wall. I heard you have several in your military impound. We pose as prisoners being transferred for study. Humans are rare enough that the Krell might find us interesting as research specimens. The room fell silent as everyone considered the audacity of the plan. It was risky, bordering on insane, but it was also the kind of unconventional thinking that had become humanity's trademark. I cannot authorize this, Telvar said finally. The Council would never approve sending civilians on such a dangerous mission. Then do not tell the Council, Princess Haywan said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. This is my decision. I am going with them. Your Highness, absolutely not, Telvar protested. You are far too valuable. That is exactly why I must go, she interrupted. If this mission fails, the Krell weapon will be deployed anyway. We all die. But if it succeeds, having a member of the royal family participate will lend the mission legitimacy. It becomes an official action rather than a rogue operation. The Emperor will never allow it, another officer said. Then we do not tell him until it is done. Haywan's voice was firm. This is not about politics or protocol. This is about survival. Dr. Tae-yang is willing to risk his life to save people he has never met. People from a species not his own. How can I do any less for my own people? Telvar studied her for a long moment, then sighed. You are as stubborn as the humans. Very well. I will assemble a small team of volunteers. Elite warriors who understand the risks. How long do we have? Tae-yang asked. According to our intelligence, the weapon will be ready for deployment in 6 days, so we need to move quickly. The next 2 days were a flurry of preparation. Tae-yang pushed his recovering body hard, rebuilding his strength. Day-in worked with Velrothi scientists to prepare potential counter-agents based on their best guesses about the weapon's composition. Jiho trained with the Velrothi soldiers, learning their equipment and tactics. The team came together slowly. Besides Tae-yang, Jiho, Daoun, and Princess Haywan, there were 4 Velrothi warriors. Each had volunteered knowing the mission was likely one way. They were grim but determined, ready to do whatever was necessary. Kylron insisted on being part of the team. I have protected the princess this long. I'm not going to stop now. They used a captured Krell scout ship, modified to mask its identification signals. The interior was cramped and uncomfortable, designed for insectoid bodies rather than humanoid ones. Tae-yang felt claustrophobic the moment he stepped inside. This is going to be a long trip, Jiho muttered. Princess Haywan reviewed the mission plan one more time. We approached the station pretending to be a prisoner transport. The humans will pose as specimens for study. The rest of us will be disguised as Krell using holographic projectors. Once we dock, we have approximately 15 minutes before their internal sensors detect the deception. 15 minutes to reach the bioweapon storage, analyze it, neutralize it, and escape, Daoun said. No pressure. What could possibly go wrong? Jiho asked with dark humor. Taeyang checked his medical equipment one final time. In addition to his usual supplies, he carried specialized analysis tools and the counter-agent compounds Da-un had prepared. Everything he might need to save lives or failing that to end the threat permanently. As they prepared to launch, Princess Haewon came to stand beside him. "Are you frightened?" she asked quietly. "Terrified," he admitted. "But fear is not a reason to do nothing. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the scary thing to do." She smiled. "You continue to surprise me, Dr. Taeyang. Most beings, when faced with fear, find reasons to retreat. Humans seem to find reasons to advance. We are not brave," he said. "We are just too stubborn to quit. There is a difference. Is there?" She placed her hand on his shoulder. "Whatever happens, I want you to know that you have already changed so much. The galaxy will never see humans the same way again. You have proven that strength is not just about power or technology. Sometimes it is about courage and determination, and refusing to accept defeat." "Let us hope that is enough," Taeyang replied. The Krell station loomed before them, a massive structure of metal and organic material fused together in disturbing ways. Weapon emplacements tracked their approach, but no one fired. The captured ship's identification codes were working. "Krell Station Control, this is Transport Vessel 47, Kael'Ron said in a perfect imitation of Krell communication patterns. "We are delivering specimens for Biological Research Division." There was a pause that felt like an eternity. Then a response came. "Transport 47, you are cleared for Docking Bay 12. Proceed slowly." They were in. As the ship moved toward the docking bay, Taeyang felt his heart pounding. In a few minutes, they would know if this desperate gamble would work. He thought about all the people counting on them. The Velrathi soldiers, the civilians on a dozen worlds, his own human colleagues back on Unity Prime. He thought about his simple medical bay, his quiet routine, his uncomplicated life. That life seemed very far away now, but he did not regret his choices. He had become a doctor to help people, and that was exactly what he was going to do, even if it killed him. The ship docked with a heavy clunk. The moment of truth had arrived. The docking bay was cold and smelled of chemicals and something organic that Taeyang could not identify. Krell workers moved around the bay, their insectoid bodies clicking and chittering as they performed their tasks. Some looked up as the team disembarked, but none seemed particularly interested. The disguises held. The holographic projectors made the Velrathi warriors look like Krell escorts, and the three humans were bound in restraints that looked real, but could be released quickly. They played their parts well, walking with heads down like frightened prisoners. A Krell supervisor approached, scanning them with a handheld device. "Specimens from the outer colonies. We were not expecting new subjects today. Priority authorization from the Bioweapons Division," Kael'Ron said, his voice modulated to sound like Krell communication clicks. "They want to test human immune responses immediately." The supervisor seemed to accept this. "Proceed to Laboratory Section 7. I will inform the research team." They moved through the station corridors following the mental map Da-un had memorized from the intelligence briefings. Every step took them deeper into the facility. Taeyang kept his breathing steady, trying to look frightened rather than alert. It was not hard. He was actually terrified. They passed several checkpoints without incident. The Krell were efficient but not paranoid about internal security. Why would they be? No one had ever successfully infiltrated one of their military stations before. But then their luck ran out. An automated scanner activated as they passed through a junction, running a deep biological analysis. Alarms immediately began to blare. The holographic disguises flickered and failed, revealing the Velrathi warriors for what they really were. "Move," Princess Haewon shouted. The restraints fell away from the humans as the team broke into a run. Krell warriors responded instantly, pouring out of side corridors. Energy weapons fired, scorching the walls. The Velrathi warriors returned fire, their crystalline weapons cutting through the air with deadly precision. "The bioweapon storage is 2 levels down," Da-un said, checking her handheld navigation device. "We need to reach the central lift." Jiho provided covering fire as they ran, his human reflexes surprisingly effective against the Krell, but there were too many enemies. The team was forced to split up, each group taking different routes to avoid being surrounded. Taeyang found himself separated from the others, running down a side corridor with only his medical supplies and his wits. He could hear the sounds of battle echoing through the station, but he had to focus on the mission. He had to reach the bioweapon. Using Dayun's navigation codes that he had memorized, he found an access shaft that led down to the research levels. It was cramped and dark, clearly not meant for regular use, but it would get him where he needed to go. He climbed down carefully, his wounded side protesting with every movement. When he finally reached the research level, he had to pause to catch his breath. The pain was intense but manageable. He had felt worse. The bioweapon containment chamber was ahead. He could see it through a reinforced window, a large crystalline container filled with a swirling dark substance. Even from this distance, looking at it made Taeyang's skin crawl. This was death in its most refined form, engineered to destroy entire populations. He moved toward the chamber entrance, but a voice stopped him. "That is far enough. Human." Taeyang turned to find a Krell facing him, but this was not a warrior. It was something else entirely. The creature was larger than normal Krell, its carapace marked with patterns that suggested high rank. Its multiple eyes studied him with what might have been curiosity. "You are the one they call the miracle healer," the Krell said. Its voice was surprisingly clear, speaking the common galactic language without any translation device. "The human who saved the Velrathi from our weapon?" "I am Dr. Taeyang," he replied, keeping his voice steady. "And you are?" "I am Hive Commander Corvin. I oversee this research facility." The Krell tilted its head in that unsettling way insects did. "You have caused my people significant difficulty. Our bio-warfare program has been compromised because of your interference. Your weapon was killing thousands of innocent beings. I did what any doctor would do. I saved lives. Lives of an enemy species," Corvin pointed out. "Why do you care about the Velrathi?" "They are not your people." "Because they are people," Taeyang said simply. "That is enough." The Hive Commander seemed to consider this. A curious philosophy. In Krell society, we prioritize the Hive above all else. Individuals matter only as they serve the collective. Your species thinks differently. Very differently, Taeyang agreed. He edged slightly toward the containment chamber, but Corvin blocked his path. "You came here to destroy the weapon or neutralize it. You cannot be allowed to succeed. Then you will deploy it? Kill millions across multiple species? If necessary, yes." Taeyang pulled out his medical scanner and displayed the data Dayun had compiled. "Commander, look at this. Your weapon is designed to spread between species through biological transmission, but our analysis shows something your scientists may have missed or chosen to ignore. The pathogen will mutate as it spreads. Within 3 to 4 transmission cycles, it will become unstable. It will stop discriminating between Velrathi biology and other types, including Krell." Corvin moved closer, examining the data. "You are lying. Our scientists would have detected this." "Maybe they did detect it and were told not to report it," Taeyang said. "Or maybe they missed it because they were so focused on making the weapon deadly that they did not consider long-term consequences. Either way, if you deploy this weapon, you will not just kill your enemies. You will eventually kill your own people too." The Hive Commander was silent for a long moment, its multiple eyes scanning through the data Taeyang had shown. "These calculations, they are sound." "How did you discover this?" "Because I am not trying to make a weapon. I am trying to prevent death. That changes how you look at things." Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Princess Heiwan and the others were fighting their way toward this location. Time was running out. "Commander Corvin, you serve your Hive. I understand that. But deploying this weapon does not serve your Hive. It endangers it. Let me neutralize the pathogen. Make it harmless. Then there is no threat to anyone. Your people, my people, the Velrathi. Everyone lives." "And the war continues," Corvin said. "Yes, but at least it remains a fair fight. Soldiers against soldiers, not genocide through disease." The Hive Commander's mandibles clicked together in what might have been a sigh. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human." "Perhaps both," it stepped aside. "I will give you 10 minutes. If you can neutralize the weapon in that time, I will let you leave. But if you fail, I will deploy it immediately rather than let the Velrathi capture this facility." Taeyang did not waste time questioning the decision. He moved to the containment chamber and began working. His hands were steady as he activated the chamber's controls and introduced the counteragent compounds. The dark substance began to react, its swirling patterns changing. Da-Yun burst into the room, followed by Jiho and two Velrathi warriors. They had their weapons raised, ready to fight, but stopped when they saw Taeyang working calmly while the Krell commander watched. "What is happening?" Da-Yun asked, confused. "I am neutralizing the weapon," Taeyang said without looking up. "Do not interfere." The process was complex, requiring precise measurements and careful timing. Taeyang's medical training guided him, but this was beyond anything he had done before. He was improvising, adapting, using every bit of knowledge he had gained over the past months. The dark substance in the container began to lighten, its menacing appearance fading. Taeyang monitored the readings carefully, adjusting the counter-agent ratios. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the substance became clear and inert. The bioweapon was neutralized. It could no longer harm anyone. Taeyang stepped back, exhausted but satisfied. "It is done." Commander Corvin approached the container and ran its own scans. Confirmed. The pathogen is biologically inactive. It poses no threat. The Krell turned to face Taeyang directly. "You have done what you said you would do. The weapon is harmless." Princess Haewon lowered her weapon slowly. "Why did you let him do this?" "Because he showed me truth," Corvin replied. "The weapon would have harmed my hive as much as yours. In preventing its deployment, he served all our interests." The commander looked at Taeyang with what might have been respect. "You value life above all else, even your enemies' lives. This is a concept the Krell do not understand well, but we understand logic, and his logic was sound." Alarms continued to blare throughout the station. "More Krell warriors would arrive soon. You should leave," Corvin said. "I will tell my superiors that the weapon was destroyed in your attack. They do not need to know I allowed this." "Why?" Jiho asked suspiciously. "Because the human is right. Genocide serves no one. The war will continue, but it will be fought honorably, soldier against soldier." The hive commander's mandibles clicked. "Perhaps one day there will be peace. The human has shown me that even the most unlikely possibilities can occur." The team made their way back to their ship, encountering minimal resistance. It seemed that Commander Corvin was keeping his word and directing forces away from their escape route.